And I'm recording.
Okay. So this is a work session. What a work session means is exactly that. We don't have, Beth, we're not going to take minutes.
Okay.
Other than we had a work session to discuss what was on the agenda.
Okay.
And so the thought is just to have a conversation and see if we can't work our way through as much of part 12 of the code as we can. So Jesse was nice enough to come, and I know there has been a small working group kind of taking a first stab at this, and so what we have here are those notes. And so I think probably the best way to do it is, Jesse, if you're willing to just kind of lead us through.
Sure.
So what we're looking, the kind of the point of this is, as we know, there are things that are confusing. There are things that are supposed to be in the code that somehow didn't make it into the online version. And then we're looking for, fairness, transparency, and efficiency.
I just noticed Eddie's not here.
Eddie is not here. Eddie resigned today.
Oh,
So,
I just thought he was going to be here a couple days ago.
yes,
Oh, okay.
so something must have come up, and I think that was probably the straw that made him realize he's just not able
Sorry
to do
to
it.
interrupt.
So we'll figure out what's gonna happen there. So again, we're looking for transparency, efficiency, and just trying to do what we think will help the village and will help us help the village. So with that, I'll.
Yeah. Absolutely. Nice to meet you all. If I haven't met you before, my name's Jesse. Work as village attorney. So we'd obviously, as we've worked through this, and I worked with Gene before that, before I came on board, the code's just very old, and it very apparently was pulled from different parts of different cities and villages all over the state and jammed together, and for 4 years it sat there. And so as we randomly come through, we would find issues that, the code speaks differently in 3 different places. So it's what applies, so you have to go through, kind of a puzzle of what passed when and what is most applicable. It's just not a good way of doing things. So as that happened, maybe the 4th or 5th time within 2 years, it was like, maybe it's time to get together and totally rewrite this. So this is a first stab at part 12. We're also going to do part 14. I'm not as far along as I'd like to be. We got a little sidetracked in the last month with all of the TIF ordinances and everything, but May should be more clear sailing to get through more of this. And in our proposal for doing this, we wanted to make sure we got together with planning and zoning for your input, because the more eyes on it, frankly, the better. Well, I find when I stare at it for more than 2 or 3 hours, I can't, I don't even know what I'm looking at anymore. So very helpful to have some other opinions. We can always, my goal is sort of go through it, and then I try and find some other cities. My firm works with a bunch of cities and villages to see what works best. So not like the previous time where we jammed everything together, but sort of to bring samples. Say, this is how Canal Winchester does it, this is how Pickerington does it, maybe this is how we could do it. So, the first part here, there's generally 1202.01. There are a couple, I just wanted to note, F and G of that are already actually in the code of the village, but if you were to look online, you would not find them there. And that's because the codifier takes time, and we work with Barb. She's now sent these additions into American Legal, so that should be updated shortly. And I think those are frankly pretty important.
So as folks have thoughts, comments, questions, just speak up. We're just, trying to work through. So like obviously C is removed because that was to get the wheel turning, and now that it is, there's, there are rotations among terms, and so that's just not necessary anymore.
Yeah, I think you'll find a lot of stuff. The first pass by the working group, which included the chair and the president of council, staff, and the attorney, was simply to get through and get a lot of technical items off the board, because otherwise that's just a time eater in general. So we were trying to do that on the side first. But we'll get into, as Jesse brings us through, we're going to get into some more meats and potatoes.
Absolutely. So if I go silent for a couple seconds at a time, don't worry.
I had a question on item G of
Sure.
the 1202.1. So where it says, that last sentence, these additional members shall also be qualified electors of the village. So what exactly is
So all that means,
qualified electors? Is
A
that
resident.
voting? A resident?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, and registered to vote.
and
And
registered to vote.
registered to vote,
Yes.
okay.
Officer Kimber's interested in those goslings too, I see.
Oh, another officer just walked up to step, I think.
Okay. So the next is just cleaning up some procedural matters of when someone can be removed from the commission. We knocked it down from 4 consecutive meetings to 3. Sort of added some language about the majority of the voting members, just to clear that up. Duties, this is really what I was talking about. Duties, I think this is an important thing for us to hone in on, and that is really G, I think has been a point of confusion. That's 1202.04, and that is another section, which is the law of the village now, but is not in the online code if you were to look. And so what that does is it permits applications to change, modify, or remodel residential structures or other structures on the property or grounds to be approved administratively, so long as it complies with all the codes. So essentially that saves you from having basically a rubber stamp, and it saves the resident time from coming in to apply to you with something that already is code compliant. So that is what G does.
And again, this is not our proposal, this is something that
Is in
previous
there
council
already.
already passed, it just
Has
has
not
not been put into what you would find online if you're looking for it.
I had a question on the one, and this was kind of like in going through this in general. So I noticed building inspector was crossed out, which makes sense because we don't do inspections, right?
Right.
But the definition for engineer, because that was popping up here and there, and I wondered, so what's the difference, or what is the definition of an engineer? Like, who is the engineer? And what does the engineer do?
So, that's a fair question. It would be, I would think, Mike Flickinger, who's our village engineer.
Yeah, that's what it,
That's-
the definition specifically say, engineer, the village engineer. And he's designated as the village engineer. Contract. Alright.
Are you talking about the use of the word engineer in F there? Is that where you're at?
Yes, yes. And I didn't even know we had an engineer.
Yes.
In fact, that engineer is the longest contiguous serving employee of the village. Though not a direct employee, but Mike Flickinger is the person who has worked directly for this village the longest.
Yeah, so that's, yes, good question. And then you'll see the note in 1202.06 about building permits. Those are issued by a certified building inspector under the ORC. We don't have one of those, which is why we struck out building inspector above that.
And so, yeah, to take a small step back, ORC, the Ohio Revised Code, is state law. So state law is where we generally fall back on, and state law can obviously supersede anything we would do. We can't do anything less restrictive than state law. And if we are silent on something, chances are state law covers it. So the fact that building permits are issued through state law means that we don't have to have our own code for it. So that's, if you hear Jesse say ORC, that's state law. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no problem. That's why we struck out that building permits shall be issued by the planning and zoning clerk. We don't issue those, so we're gonna strike that. Sort of reordered and added to 120207, that's probably our first section with a lot of proposals to it.
Actually, I'm backing up to that last one, on
Sure.
item D, it says, building permit applications involving new construction, repair, or alterations of existing building structures shall be reviewed and approved by the commission before the building inspector. So we don't do that, do we? I mean, we aren't
You
reviewing.
do not review items that are, in the private realm, right? You review items that are, and we'll get to that, I think, that are more in the public realm. So you saw the plans, you saw the site plans and stuff where applicable. You don't review building permits in full, as you know, as an architect.
Right, I know.
So, but you review the site plans as it applies under the zoning, and that site plans are part of building permit submission. So they have to go through us to get their zoning certificate prior to submitting anything to building department, commercial or residential.
So should we change commission to village?
Well, I mean, that thing in general, building permit applications, like, we aren't reviewing those. I mean, as a commission, we aren't reviewing those.
You're not reviewing a full building permit application, you are, we can change it to the zoning, Jesse, I don't know.
Yeah, that's-
I would wanna get some terminology in there.
That's what I'm trying to think, yeah.
But there is a process for, the commission has to review it under certain circumstances.
Okay, well, I mean, well, then I think that if that's true, then that paragraph sounds misleading.
Yeah, no, we
I think you're right.
we can
Yeah.
language that up, so.
Yeah.
Commission has to review a site plan in parts of. Yes, good catch. Thank you.
Can we get that officer arrested for disrupting a meeting?
Let's see, 120207, so that requires a public hearing for a rezoning request. That's in compliance with, that's the state code there, RC 713.12. And this sort of, I think, I did lift this from another city, I can't recall which, but it basically just walks through the procedure of the hearing. With zoning measures are legislative decisions, so you always frame those in front of a planning and zoning commission as a recommendation to council, which is the ultimate legislative authority. So, you know, you as the sort of quote unquote the subject matter experts review that and pass a recommendation along to council. They're free to agree with your recommendation or to disagree with it. We require public hearings at both levels of them. Where you get in trouble is when you shut people down, don't permit public hearings. It is always worth it, I find, to, frankly, the more the better, so that everyone knows they've had a chance to be heard on the matter.
So it's a public hearing of both tiers.
Correct. The commission has one, commission opens it up, hears it, does a public hearing, talks amongst themselves, makes a recommendation, goes to council, council opens a public hearing, says we have this recommendation before us, close the public hearing, vote on it.
Fair enough.
In item D of that paragraph, it says council action that differs from the recommendation of council. Should that be council action that differs from recommendation of commission?
Yes, it should. Thank you.
Or to council,
Recommendation.
right.
Yes, or the recommendation to council, yep.
Oh, okay,
Yes, yeah, either way, I was wrong, one of those two words.
okay.
That's right, so this is what we had here, we have, and this is okay, this is permissible. If the council disagrees with the recommendation of the commission, it has to be a 3/4 vote, not just a majority vote. So that gives you the commission has some teeth behind the recommendation. You don't have to do it that way, that's how I drafted it up, so. And I think that was part of the discussion we had with Brady, and it was like, it's to give you some power in this, rather than just a shoot, move it from one desk to the next, to have some input on it. Subdivision regulations, I don't know if we had that many changes in this yet. At some point, Eric and I discussed, we're gonna have to do, it's not the right word, but sort of a survey. We're not gonna do an engineering survey of every lot in the village, but something that we can draft up, because basically every lot in the old part of the village is non-conforming by this code. So we wanna find.
It's typically done, but I find the ones along Minerva Lake Road are the ones that are most in conformance. It was more street related from what I can, have gone through and seen. But obviously certain streets, it is not in conformance. So we have to have some slightly different zoning regs that can make the vast majority of those districts conform, so.
So in our code, we say that lots have to be this big, that setbacks have to be this big, that driveways have to be this wide, and there are houses that when they passed that code,
Did not mean it.
didn't meet it at that time. So they basically took a cookie cutter and said, everybody will just do this, even though houses that had already been built.
So it's
and
like a
standing-
grandfather then kind of, I mean.
It's a legal non-conforming status.
Right,
of
it's a,
lots.
yeah, it's a weird grandfathering that causes a whole lot of headaches. And if they would have just gone through more thoughtfully in the first place and said,
Slapping it down.
this set of streets are going to be called
R1,
A.
yeah.
These are gonna be B, these are gonna be C. These are the rules for each of them. Then you would have, you know, multiple shaped cookies.
Yeah, in theory, when we get done with this, you'll have like 4, that's just a number I picked, 4 residential zoning districts, R1 through 4, that this meets R1, and we'll have that written here.
I see. A lot of definitions.
Lot of definitions.
We would probably be adding to that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Just to modernize it, there's a lot more out there.
So the next one, you probably jump through that, down to 12.02 on building and repair permits, and I have a note there to myself to look if we can delete this entirely, because the village doesn't issue building permits. Have to figure that out. That's, yeah, 12.02, building and repair permits. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I just had a minor thing back, actually it was on 12:10.
Sure.
And actually kind of throughout the record where they're using more gender neutral language instead of the his and her, the they or they and there.
Absolutely. Let's see, where were you there?
That first place I saw was in 12:10:03, but I know it's probably in
Everywhere.
multiple.
The mayor or their designee.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jesse, I have a tech question, I didn't catch it the first time through on 12.12.03 and in relation to what you brought up on 12.12.02.
Oh, sure, yes.
Language is, and this is old language, but it says, for reading 12.12.03, council shall not permit any public improvement over which it has any control to be made, or permit any money to be expended for improvements in any area that has been subdivided or upon any street has been platted after the date of adoption of these subdivision regulations, which was back in '89. It just seems very conflicting. Since council is the ultimate legislative authority and therefore override this, which they have done in my view many times in the course of the last 30 years.
Right.
I don't understand why it's in here.
Wait, unless such subdivision or street has been approved in accordance with the provisions of these regulations.
Yes.
So either it's been permitted with this or by following any variance.
True.
Right.
If it's just strange. 'cause
Which
if
either
you-
way makes it
You wouldn't build it
redundant,
without,
right?
Yeah, you wouldn't
Well,
build it without a public spec situation anyways if it's a public improvement. It's just a weird thing.
Is
It
this-
is.
Is this saying it just can't be done without authorization?
Right,
Yeah,
which
which
you
is-
have to have anyway.
Yeah, because you have to approve contracts, you have to approve the,
Yeah.
it's a strange thing. I don't know. I see it as a redundant piece of language.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
You don't like the buzzy bat
Now it's just
balance?
gonna drive me batty. I deal with it much longer.
We had moved in and our kitchen had a bank of 32 fluorescent 4-foot bulbs.
Did it really?
That was the first thing to go.
We've dimmable can lights, and if you dim them, they buzz.
Oh, see, we replaced them with dimmable can lights that don't buzz.
Well, but that would be work. I could just not dim them, don't you see?
Preliminary plats, there wasn't much there, sort of,
What page are you on, Jesse?
I am now down to 1214.06. We didn't change anything in the preliminary plat language before that. And all that does, the few additions we made to 1214.06, I think it didn't change anything. I think it just clarified that you approve the plat, approve it with modifications, or disapprove it. That's the same reason. If you disapprove it, we just have to make a record of why you disapproved it, based on the criteria all listed above that we didn't go through, because I think your code is actually very good in that perspective. If we have to change anything, once we do our little survey of the village, we can do that, but it's not really a conversation point.
The plats were changed in 14. The likelihood of ever doing another plat in this village is kind of nil. So.
Right, that's exactly. So reach the end of that. Things we can scroll, and I'm just jumping through all this fun plat. Oh, I'm on now top of page 23. I did the same thing. I changed it to a 3/4 vote of council if they want to approve a plat that you have disapproved. Just to keep it consistent with the prior 3/4 that I put in there. But again, like Eric just mentioned, in fact, a plat will probably never happen again here, so.
Unless we get all Genghis Khan and start taking over adjacent or non-adjacent.
Non-adjacent.
It's possible. Some 50 years from now, we look back on this.
So really, Title VI gets into, and I need to sit down and sort of map out like a 30,000 foot view of the entire code and everything we're looking at, and see if it makes sense in the order in which it is placed. I think some of it does not make sense. So Title VI technically starts the zoning code. What page are we on? 33. So yeah, Title II is planning. What was Title IV? Subdivision regulations, and then Title VI is zoning.
So where are we at on this?
We're now on page 33.
Right towards the bottom, Title VI zoning.
Yep,
Should make that bigger.
we should, yes, all of it. It's the smallest font in the whole page.
It's bolded.
That's true.
Mine must be a different.
Yeah.
33? I'm on 32.
Oh, you know what, I've probably added some
Yeah.
comments and it's shifted everything down, so yeah, let's see what you're 34.
32.
Right there. See,
Oh,
yeah,
there was
yeah,
it,
yep, yep,
okay,
yep.
that's where.
Oh, that's a note there, I have, on variances about non-conforming lots, structures, or uses. Typically, variances, in other cities and villages, variances are approved by planning and zoning. and does not require council. So at the last sentence of that, I have a note there. It says a variance from any development standard must be obtained by approval of planning and zoning and council. I would say that it's just planning and zoning, and then of course I would put in an appeal process to council from a decision of planning and zoning. If you don't, what happens is they can appeal to the county common police court under chapter 2506 of the revised code. And again, it's always, I recommend to every village or city to run every decision up through council every chance you can get before going to court, because the decision of a council is considered more final. A court is much less likely to disturb a ruling of council than a non-elected body like planning and zoning commission. So if it's possible, I always build in an appeal to the council, even if the planning and zoning is actually making the decision on it. So,
But we don't currently make the decision.
So so this is a different portion of the code, so this is for non-conforming lots, structures, or uses. I mean, that sounds, so if it's a fence permit variance, so what, does that change that that variance request would come to planning and zoning for a decision?
it would not, where would that go now?
So the variance would go to council. It would come to planning and zoning for a recommendation.
Right. Okay.
And then council for a decision.
Okay.
Yeah, all variances, my understanding is all variances of
Variances come to-
every sort currently follow the same route.
Right,
They
they
go
go to
here
planning
for a
and zoning for-
recommendation and then they go to
Yeah.
council for a decision.
Okay, I think I touched on that. Let's scroll down because there was a variance section. I think
Yes, it's coming up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
perfect.
So in this one, what you're suggesting is that it would come to planning and zoning for a decision.
Yes.
And council for an appeal.
Yes. Doesn't have to. We can, in fact, it's probably simpler if we keep every single one the exact same one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Totally agree with that. Let's see if I can find, we're gonna come up on it here in a moment. Lots of definitions. Yeah, there we go, 1232.01. I've added that, the issuance of a variance to permit exceptions to and variance deviations from the strict interpretation of the zoning code shall be under the authority of the planning and zoning. So that, I have written this in to have it be your determination, and then an appeal to council on variances. Doesn't have to be, again.
I'm fine with that, you're the councilman.
I feel like that is a big change as to how it goes. I know I don't hate it. I think it can be sold to council. I mean, it's, but I wouldn't not expect lots of questions when it gets to council.
Cool.
So what do we as the commission think? So
Yeah.
this would be a change to give us more authority, which, with authority comes pissing more people off. So, when it comes to a variance request, we would be the ones who say yes or no. Obviously, there's still an appeal process if someone disagrees with us.
So the way we have it now is if there's a variance and we just make the recommendation and council makes the decision, so then this is the change that we would
So we would
that
make,
decision.
we would make the decision and then they would,
They would hear an
It would
appeal
only
if someone
be,
is.
right, if someone
Yes.
says, I don't like that decision, I would like to appeal that decision. I'm gonna go to a higher authority, then council is the higher authority.
So right now, if they don't like the decision that council makes and wanna go to a higher authority.
They go to the county.
They have to go to the
Yeah.
county.
Yep.
So I would say that it does change the nature of this body from a purely recommending body to now a
Decision making.
a decision-making authoritative body.
Which
Which is, again, I personally don't have a problem with that.
Which we were to some extent prior to ordinance 2020 that had permits approved administratively.
No, cause even then, you were approving permits, but variances were still recommendations.
Right.
And anything that was outside of what's the language I wanna say, on its
Anything that
face.
needed a variance.
Anything that wasn't compliant.
Right.
Yeah.
Would
Would
need a
require a
variance
variance,
would go-
and then
right.
it would go to council, so all you were, before that ordinance, you're just approving things that are obviously approvable.
Right.
So it's not
necessarily approved.
necessarily
Yeah, you have to
approvable.
approve that.
Right,
You
yeah,
have
yeah,
a
yeah.
choice, cause it.
Exactly.
Code. If you scroll down, it gets a little in more depth of what the process would look like here if you were making a decision, the review.
The nature of
Review
it.
procedure.
Review proceedings.
I already see one typo I had in D. I said in making its recommendation. I'm gonna change that in making its decision.
Yeah, I see that too. Now, when you say within 35 days of public hearing, you were saying there would be a public hearing, because in the past, of course, a public hearing can be held at council prior to, and this body would make a recommendation prior to that public hearing.
So this, that's only built in case, how it works 99% of the time is you have the public hearing the same night as you make
Yes,
your
yeah,
decision.
right.
That's right.
Which is built in there, but you don't have to.
Right, we wanna go all Supreme Court, we can.
Kick it out, yeah, you have 35 days to say, we're not gonna give you an answer
Consider.
tonight.
And would this vote be just a majority, or, cause that one other decision, you changed to 3/4 earlier?
That was, the 3/4 is
To over-
village council overturning the recommendation
That
of
was the,
P&Z.
for,
Yep.
there was the appeal.
Yep,
Okay.
yep. This would just be a simple majority.
So I think that having planning and zoning review the variance and make the decision seems to be more in line with what other
It is,
planning and zoning commissions.
Unless you have a BZA.
yes, unless you have board of zoning appeals too. They can, yeah,
True, yeah.
but yes.
But those are usually bigger, aren't they? Bigger districts have that.
They are. It's rare that council, certainly I think council here probably has the bandwidth to do it, but if it's gonna involve some more people and get some more eyes on it. I think
How often is there a variance? I mean,
that's a good question.
It happens more recently because of the new subdivision, because we were running into some things, i.e. Corner lots is a good example, and then council changed it to match, the variance, which is what ends up happening, if you're getting the same variance request over and over and over again, then you make a change, right? But for just standard variances, we see them, I'd say 2 or 3 a year, it's not bad, you were supposed to have one tonight, the folks couldn't get their stuff together, it'll be in June, by the time that happens. But the good examples across the way there, that guy had about 4 or 5 variances all in one, that was a very odd lot, so we had to get that all straightened out.
And that was the only one we reviewed last year, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
There was a fence that,
I think council made a change to code before that last fence variance came through.
The one for, which one, the one for the
I
corner?
forget, yeah, I think so.
Because the corners were done last year too, if I recall.
no, there was one where the builder just didn't have a 14-foot setback, and I think the builder ended up just
Redoing
deciding to fix it before it went to us. I don't know, as of right now, we should be the planning and zoning advisory board, because we don't do anything but advise. I would love, it would take a tiny bit of work off of council's shoulders if we were to do this. If we're going to say no to any variance, we're going to piss someone off, right? If we're going to say yes, there's a possibility that we're going to piss someone off.
Oh, yeah.
If we say no, it wouldn't even go to council then, correct?
Well,
Unless they appeal.
Unless they could appeal, no.
The applicant can appeal, if you say yes to a variance, someone withstanding affected by the variance appeals to council.
I see.
Right, so a neighbor, for example, who did not like a deck going, encroaching too far, or may have granted.
You allowed the roof height to go higher than code says, the neighbor says it blocks my morning sun, I'm going to, appeal that
Yeah.
Now,
variance.
the one thing that I think, trying to think about the village as a whole, creating one level of additional safeguard bureaucracy, whatever you wanna call it, before you get to the county, is going to save the aggrieved money.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Absolutely.
what's
And the village
it
money.
cost to have an appeal heard by council? What's it cost to go to Franklin County? So I think that would add some bit of safeguard. It's not to say they're gonna get the decision they want from council that they didn't get, but that's not to say they're ever gonna get the decision they want.
To meet that with, historical context, I am not aware of a single appeal getting to county
Yeah.
in the last decade. So, but it
Right,
is,
but
but it
hopefully we're
could.
writing this for more than a decade.
Yeah, but it could, that savings is a real potential.
Yeah, I mean, and frankly, it saves the village money.
Right.
'Cause we do a lot of these for other cities, and I mean, it's $25,000 to defend it and go through the hassle of putting together a record and all of that, so.
Right, I am confused on, what is this, 123201. Well, it's under, it's a fairly, no, it's beyond two, it's,
31.
so it's here, it's the change of zoning use, in that variance process, it's all the way down to.
Oh, I see, yeah.
Big
Under
number
D-
2
D2.
in parentheses,
Yeah, yeah.
B2.
Yes.
D2, change of zoning use in the event of a variance or
This is a spot
modification.
zoning
Yes.
language, correct?
Yeah, therefore
Okay.
would change the character of the land use, the result of which would be to permit a different zoning use on the property, all in accordance with the foregoing sections, then the variance or modification shall become effective only after it has been approved as a variance or modification by council.
That's supposed to be for a use variance.
So
Very
this is,
specific.
if whatever the variance was that has been approved by this board changes the land use,
Right.
then that still has to go to council.
You
Yeah.
approved so many
Yeah.
variances that the home is now a gas station.
Or if I wanna turn,
Okay.
I wanna turn my house into a restaurant.
But it would, it would be.
That's
the
gotta go to
houses,
council.
But it would be
Right.
specific use variance request in that case, because that has to go to council in that case.
Yeah, and that's, I think my note is, this
Yeah.
is a use variance,
Yes.
you have to treat
There it
it,
is.
basically, if it comes in like that, if staff would review it, and you'd say, well, this is a use variance, they wanna change this isn't building the roof a little higher, this is changing what the property is used for, it should kick
Yeah.
back up to the rezoning
Okay.
process.
Something not allowed within the
Okay.
residential district.
Because it looked, as it was written, as a change in the process suggested, I just wanted for
Yep.
clarity.
Yep,
So what do we think? Do we want this responsibility?
Yeah.
Do we wanna, I mean, and again, do we wanna ask council for this responsibility? That's all we can do.
Quicker for the residents also, potentially.
Potentially.
Well, council meets every week, but that's
2 weeks.
every 2
Every
weeks.
2 weeks.
And we are required to meet quarterly, but
But you're already a bottleneck in it because it's gotta come to you first
that's
anyways.
right. Yeah, we already have to have a hearing to recommend it to council. So
That's
yes, by its very definition, yes, it would be quicker.
Because you could have that hearing and approve it.
Right, and then not
And
have to wait
never
for the
have
next
to go
council
any
meeting.
further.
Yeah.
So yeah, it would be
Unless we
quicker.
make them wait the 35 days.
that's correct, that's correct, which I have never seen happen, but it could.
You do that, I've seen it happen in other municipalities, you do that when you've got, as you know, a problem and you wanna review it with your legal counsel before a
That's fair.
decision is made.
Yeah,
right?
cause
That's
I don't
what
wanna
happens.
pop off uninformed in the meeting,
Right.
give me a week, yeah.
And then it would also give the residents another, like you said, if somebody didn't like that decision, they would have another avenue to go to council, and council would probably be like, no, the decision stands and so then. Yeah.
But, you know, and, you know, I trust us around the table,
But
but,
who knows,
yeah,
this body will be.
a P and Z in 10 years could be terrible people. And so to give that, you know, and that's what, you know, I do this for a living, you know, you make a law for you try and do the most amount of good for the most amount of people for the longest amount of time. And so we might all get old and crotchety and disapprove everything, and at least then if it goes to council, there's a chance. And on the flip side, council could be absolutely awful and could say, we're gonna disapprove everything, but at least we could approve it here, and if the folks don't file an appeal, then we're okay.
Yep.
So it's a balance.
I say yes. Let's do it.
I'd say yes, but I'm not voting. So.
You are at a work session. Okay,
So
that's-
yeah, okay.
Yeah, there is no voting, but yeah, I mean, it's,
It speeds up the process. I mean, it's minimal. I mean, we barely see that many variances, anyways.
Right.
And we
And
have
it
to
gives
do-
gives them an opportunity for the council to review it and change their mind. I think it just kind of a no-brainer in my opinion. But
alright,
Cool.
then it is as it's written, or it'll be proposed to council.
That's right.
There you go.
Lord knows what those animals will do with it when they get it.
Take a read over conditional uses and the restaurant real quick. I just added that definition of conditional use that's widely accepted.
if we don't get through this week, will we just have like another work session?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
It's one of those things where this is just gonna be a long process, because we as the working group have to get back together, do work, probably in the next 2 months when we've got a number of projects out for bid. And then, between our busy times, and so we'll see this, a few more
Words
times.
stop making sense when you do stuff like this.
And it's just, this will just burn your mind if you did too much of it at once.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's a lot. It's pretty heavy. I was trying to read it at home and I was like, I gotta step away from this.
Yeah, you have to spread it out a bit.
Yeah.
What's a permit again? And this one, I know there's still 120 pages left, but there's a big gap where there's nothing that matters in here.
That's right.
Councilman, I've asked Jesse to spend extra time making sure that we figure out the goose issue.
There's a goose issue?
We have, it's my favorite part
Oh,
of the
the
code.
feed the goose, can't
Right.
feed the goose in
It's
designated
illegal in
areas.
the entire village to feed the geese, and we also have a designated goose feeding zone.
Yeah,
Are you serious?
I mean, by my read, yeah.
Where we at, sorry?
And so, it would be nice to,
Eliminate.
that's why we're doing this, right?
Sure,
At
sure,
some
sure.
point, somebody said, it would be cool if we could feed the geese, and at another point, somebody said, absolutely not, but they never actually.
never
Oh, man.
reconciled. Well, I guess then it would matter which one was passed first, right? Because the one that's second would supersede.
Right, yeah, it would matter which one's passed second, yeah.
Absolutely
But
not,
yes.
for most reason.
And the one I'm in favor of,
Yeah, yes.
unless you wanna poke your ears, Lisa, unless you wanna feed them poison.
Why do you say me? You would.
I wouldn't do that.
I do make them move. Like, people stop the damn things, and so they basically are training people, and that's training them. So I do not stop. I make the damn things move.
They always move.
Oh, they will, last
Yeah.
minute sometimes.
My
So,
my
they
wife
move.
gave me a heartbreaking piece of information this time of year last year, that they mate for life. And so if you hit one, chances are there's going to be another goose just standing around, I don't know what to do now, this was mine. And then like 2 weeks after you told me that, I saw a dead goose in the road, not in the park, but Dead Ghost Hunter, and then one just standing there, and I was like, oh man, these things are
Yeah,
alive now.
they move on.
They have feelings.
They move on.
They may never mate, but they'll move on.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's really kind of like a half-life after that, but half a life is better than no life
That's
at all,
right.
so.
Want them to live happy, healthy lives somewhere else.
Criteria for approval for conditional use, that is just, I mean,
Where are you at right now?
He's at, well, this, I guess page 40 for you.
yeah, for, under the conditional
1232,
uses.
102.
So every zoning district obviously has their permitted uses that you absolutely have to allow that use in the district, it's not up to the village. Then there's conditional uses, of which there are lists under each zoning district, and when somebody wants to propose a conditional use, you have to have some criteria that you can review in approving it. So it's a way of keeping tabs on, we've said, it's okay to allow that, but we're gonna want some oversight of it. So I put the 5 criteria in here, that are pretty standard. It is a conditional use of the district, and it meets all the development standards. It's compatible with all the land around it. It doesn't adversely impact traffic, public facilities. It won't result in destruction of natural features, and it won't affect, this is sort of the catch-all, won't adversely affect public health, safety, convenience, and welfare. So any denial of a conditional use has to explain why at least 3 of those 5 factors aren't met. That's sort of generally how it's explained.
Right, so D in that gets back to the same question, right? This is another
Yes.
opportunity for P and Z to approve or
Recommend.
or recommend.
Yep.
And so what we're talking about here is, say, someone who wants to open a car detailing business from their home.
If
It's a conditional use, right?
it's a conditional use.
Right.
Yes, this
Yes,
is conditional
correct.
use.
Yeah, if that's, yeah.
Their permitted use is single-family
Single-family,
dwelling.
right, yeah.
And they're asking to treat it as a business, and so then what we're looking at is, are they making a lot of noise? Are they parking cars in the street? Are they,
Right, do they meet the 5
Right.
5 criteria?
Yep. And then, and that example, you can, as a body, either P and Z or council can put conditions on it. So it's, yeah, you can do this, but you can't have more than 2 other vehicles in the street or in your driveway, or
Right.
you limit the time of the day, that type of thing. So, that's all reasonable and allowed. And so, yeah, here it's, how did I draft it here?
Well, that's gonna affect some homes in the new area, for sure.
Well, it depends.
Depends
There's some
on.
detailers
Well,
in the new division.
yeah, it depends on
Yeah,
if they approach anybody to get conditional use,
Also
or if they
true.
just continue to.
So I have it drafted here as you making a recommendation to council.
right.
Apple, shall Apple the criteria compliance. What are your thoughts? Do you want to make a recommendation on that?
This has to go to council regardless, because it's conditional use, correct? So what I'm seeing here.
I think that's right. Well, yes, yes. It's a zoning decision, so
That's
yes,
right.
it should go, yeah. Variances can be handled, I shouldn't even ask the question. It has to be a recommendation.
Yeah.
That's, I
Yeah.
saw that there, and that's why I
Sorry,
wanted to
yes.
make sure we paused here, so then, yeah, so this is just a recommendation.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I would, I know we're trying to keep things consistent, but 35 days for us to make a recommendation is too long, right?
Yep.
That gives a bad commission the chance to hold things up unnecessarily.
Yeah.
Especially if it's only a recommendation, right?
Right, right,
Make a new number. 10 days?
yeah.
7, 10, yeah, I'm fine with.
10's probably good, it gives because frankly, the attorney's gonna end up having to draft it, so.
Right.
10 would be nice.
Look at you thinking of you or
Only
your
yourself,
or your
only of
successor.
myself, yeah.
So if they don't apply, they can do these things
No.
and
No.
potentially nothing happens to them.
No, it's a violation.
Well, yes, they can, but they're breaking the law.
But they may not.
Yeah.
So but how would anyone know?
Yeah,
Well, they
So
get,
what happens?
get,
Code
so,
enforcement.
for example, yeah, so let's talk about the auto detailing. So,
Okay.
because we have this as a live example, right?
Sure.
we've had to come down on a few people, kinda hard, right, and say, because they're out next sidewalks and stuff like
Blocking
that.
sidewalks.
Yeah, they're doing things, so they're in violation on multiple levels there, and we go and have a discussion, you know, if they're still blocking the sidewalk, that's something the officers can immediately enforce. If they're still running something, you know, without permission on the site, then it becomes on the private side, it becomes a zoning issue. We potentially have taken the mayor's court and beyond that, you know, but there's a process to handling each particular part of that violation, you know, depending on where it's occurring on the property
Okay,
and how it's impacting the public,
I see.
so. But they haven't even asked permission in that case, so
Do daycares need conditional use?
they.
Almost certainly do, I can't,
They are, so under our code right now, which is what we'll get to, we
Right.
can make them a conditional use, right? Right now, they're locked into that whole weird home occupation
Right.
code
Okay.
that we've got.
Okay.
And so you're allowed to have them under, you know, certain conditions with certain amount of children, yada yada.
Yeah.
You can apply different rule sets now that we're going through this, and, you know, we'll get to that from a recommendation standpoint.
yeah, I think that's really a good focus of this will be to, I think probably first step is to figure out, although it'll always be residential, or few residential districts, and then run through each one of those, what we want to be permitted uses that are just outright allowed, and then the conditional ones, the daycare would be a perfect example. Like, show us your licensure by the state, show us there's gonna be a capacity on children, et cetera.
Okay.
I think the next change there was the fees, for variances and conditional uses. I think what our language I'm sorry, it's 1232.03. I think what we changed there, basically allows council to implement a fee schedule, and then council, grants the mayor the power to modify that fee
Yeah.
schedule.
And that's just bringing it in line with how we've been doing fees for a while now.
Sure.
We had a Board of Zoning Appeals here, in 1234. But that's what the chapter's titled, but I don't really see, there's no reference to Board of Zoning Appeals, it talks about the Planning and Zoning Commission. So we just struck the whole chapter, which I think is fine.
Because yeah, anything we do is either approved by or appealed to council.
Right.
Yep.
Well, do we need to put this back though, if that other section comes back?
Can we redirect, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, no problem. 1234 is what other, I'm sorry.
So if we change this so that we are doing, that the planning and zoning commission is making the decision on the variance, then does this section need to come back for?
It doesn't need
address
to.
appeals?
It
No?
doesn't, as
Okay.
long as our other section, which I think it does,
Addresses it?
addresses the appeal process to council.
Yeah, you have a
rather
very
than-
large section you put in above this.
Yes.
That's what it was,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, I don't, in a village this size, I don't see a need for 3 separate bodies looking at this.
So you'd have the same process that exists here.
Yes,
Just with a different name.
yes, we've changed it. P and Z appeals to council, not to a Board of Zoning Appeals, which I don't even know, I wouldn't be shocked if that had never been used, that chapter. Amendments, that's amendments to the zoning code, which is what we're doing right now, so we will have, council, they basically have by retaining the firm to do this, and then we'll walk through P and Z, bring it to you, send up a recommendation to council, they'll make the final review and do whatever changes they want to it.
We have another his or her in 123602.
Oh, perfect. Oh, yeah. Okay. Do a Control F for all those.
Yeah.
Careful, sometimes you do that and weird things will happen, right? Because the classic was in an early edition of Dungeons and Dragons, they decided to change, they used to call wizards mages.
Okay.
And so they did a Control F on the word mage, and just change it all to wizard, but you also use the word damage a lot in the game. So all the places where the word damage was, it was DeWizard.
That's very funny.
And that made it to print. Like there are people with copies, hard
Which
copies
edition
of
was
that.
that, you know?
Like
collector's
a
item.
reprint of the second edition, maybe,
I
or
missed that one, man. I
yeah,
had
or
my
maybe
second
third.
edition.
Might be
Wizard.
third.
Might be third, that may be third.
It's like an early print of third.
That's right.
That's great stuff.
Okay, so there, okay, 123603, the authority of the Planning and Zoning Commission and Council hearings. I put a note that it is very much, to me, and maybe I was wrong, maybe this third time through I'm reading this, I might change my mind, but to me, it seemed very much duplicative of the very first, the powers of the Planning and Zoning Commission. And maybe it's not completely duplicative, and we should amend that 120207 to include whatever is in this section here.
This section gives us the ability to send a resolution to council. And I think that's the only thing
New and different.
that this does that's special.
Okay.
But I do agree that you should, when you reorder things, it should be higher up on the
Yes.
duties. versus-
Yeah, the
doesn't
power to
belong
do that.
magically in the middle of the
Yes.
code.
Because you don't find it when you're looking, like, oh, what is our power, S, P, and Z?
Yeah,
Then
nobody would do that.
you shouldn't have to read 169 pages to find all of your.
No.
Yeah, and I think that's important. That's, so if we
Absolutely.
see something, if we're getting a bunch of variance requests, or if we see something that doesn't make sense, we as a commission can put together a resolution and say, we want you guys to do something about this, and then
Yep.
they must act on it.
Well,
Yep.
sure, this body had the signage ordinance that just came up.
Right.
Or there was another one right before that,
Yeah, I've lost track.
that I don't, yeah, I remember passing something.
Yeah.
Yeah, been a few things for sure.
Yeah,
1238 is the districts generally. That first part talks about what we just did, what's the permitted use, what's a conditional use, and how you.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no
So
problem.
I think
Sorry.
what we just said was, in your note from 123603, you're gonna basically bake this into the previous
Yes.
duties and responsibilities. Okay, good.
So that all of our duties are in one place.
Yep, good,
Yeah.
good. I just wanted to make sure that you said that explicit.
So this permitted and conditional use, is that what we're getting into now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Is probably going to be a subject for a separate later work session.
Yes, once we, yes.
That will take place after a whole bunch of other work is done to figure out.
Exactly.
That'll be something we do at the end of the process.
Yep, and my note was I'm to look at updated definitions, but these are generally these are the definitions of what each is. So we're in good shape there, now we just need to say what those uses are.
Right, so I would propose just skipping, for
Yep.
today, just skipping that section
Yep.
entirely.
And frankly, all of these, because this is where we need to go through and figure out what is
Right.
R1, 2, 3, 4, and yeah, this whole table. We already went through a little bit and crossed off what we think will no longer be.
In existence.
Yes.
This doesn't use.
District boundaries, same thing,
So we're skipping straight over 1238.
and 1240, oh, yeah.
1250,
Yeah, these next multiple pages are each zoning district. They're now permitted uses, they're now conditional uses,
Right.
and the development standards for each one.
and so, yeah, this will be very important, but we're just not.
We're not.
Not there.
there.
Until we figure out exactly what districts we're going to have.
Alright, somebody let me know where we're picking back
Yeah,
up
I'm
here.
scrolling here,
119.
Permitted uses. Personal
120.
services, beauty shops, nice.
And I think, here's not homework, but think of what are problem locations, problem businesses? There might not be a way that we can outright not allow them, but think about it and we can get creative with.
Can we preemptively allow cannabis sales?
can.
Before,
You can.
so that way we can be the first?
No, absolutely.
So we can get
Yeah,
that
I mean,
sweet, early adopter money?
If you wanna Google trigger laws and learn
Oh,
all
yeah.
about
Yeah,
things
I
going
was
on
gonna
today.
say, right.
Just so you know, I will
We
bring
did
that
have-
back up when we come to that, because
Oh, I
it's,
like Eric's conversation.
Yeah, we did have calls, obviously, when there was the rounds that they have to get permission from the locality when they were doing medical marijuana, and because they have to pre-identify
Right.
for the Department of Pharmacy to approve them, right, that's who's overseeing that particular process. And so, yeah, we had some calls, especially down on Route 3 on the corner, especially on that, was the north or southwest side of the intersection there, you know, old 161, new 161, and then the, State Route 3. And that was vacant for a while, so there were a number of conversations, and I said, listen, we can bring it up to council to adopt, because it doesn't, our zoning doesn't specifically permit that, it permits some, there's some interpretation that has to happen around that, but obviously for something to get straight permission, we have to have council change zoning. I said, it's quite possible, it would be fine, I said, we would have to have a proposal and go through the process, but you can definitively pre-zone stuff as part of your permitted uses.
Oh, yeah.
And that'll simply allows for then them to get their permission to go in when they're ready.
Yeah.
Without even having a
And
problem.
Brian, that was, Eric and I talked about that, and the conversation that we had was, we either need to nip it in the bud or allow, I think it just
Nip it in
needs
the
to be
bud.
but, no pun intended.
Literally.
Well, yeah, if you look at Michigan, like in that right up 75, there's one particular town that its name is escaping me right now.
Yeah.
But they were the first ones,
They've
and
got-
they've got
They've got them.
plenty of dispensaries and plenty of sweet tax revenue.
That's right.
Well,
That's the other side of it too, is you can attach fees and all kinds of
Oh,
different
yeah.
things, and it's a very nice revenue stream in many cases.
There is, with the, business development, the NCC, whatever it is, just so you know, there is discussion of on Morse Road right now.
Yeah,
For dispensary.
Yeah, I don't know the exact, I just caught the tail end of it.
we can have the bougie dispensaries.
Well, and we can also discuss public use when we pass our open container legislation.
Part
And
of our
just
DORA.
put that in as a trigger.
Yeah,
There are other medical dispensaries though.
They're around, yeah.
Yeah.
They have
I know there's one in
pre-approval, there's been
Clintonville.
2 rounds, yeah, that's happened. The first round happened, I think it was pre-COVID, I can't
Yeah.
recall.
4066 Morse Road.
Yeah, and then the second round happened kind of mid to post-COVID, and
But yeah, but we're on the cusp of recreational use,
Yeah.
which.
yeah,
it'll be referendum at some point, people
which
will vote
will
for it.
explode that market. It would be nice if we
All
could
of
get
it.
some sweet
We ready?
tax revenue out of that.
Yeah, sweet
Walkable.
tax revenue.
Chapter 1272, I have it at page 120, so it'll be right around there.
I'm 119 in the printout.
That
Oh,
is-
117, I'm sorry.
Oh, perfect, okay.
1272. Yeah.
That is the general development standards, and my note, this is a perfect example of weird order. So in our final version, we'll have it be zoning districts, and maybe I'm even wrong, but zoning districts, general development standards, individual zoning districts, as opposed to this order where we've gone through each separate district and their criteria, and then at the end had a catch-all for everyone, which just doesn't add up to me. So we'll move this up to the top.
Yep.
What did we wanna talk about here? There was something, fences, walls, and landscaping shall be permitted in any required yard or along the edge of any yard. 3 feet height. Oh, it was height and width requirements. I said, I think somebody had brought that up. I said it's a policy decision on front fences. I don't know if this board or council has any appetite to change that, but it's certainly up to you.
Oh, it's right, 'cause we have it in there already, where we have fences that are allowed to a certain height, right? That's
Yes.
the issue. Yeah, it's an
Yes.
old code, that's correct. So that, again, yeah, you're right, it's much, that's something they'll have to talk about.
Yeah.
You don't see anyone really doing it, but they could.
Right. Let's see.
Oh, this is 3 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Building lines and setbacks.
the note here.
Which one are you on?
The,
03?
127202 C1D driveways.
Yeah, oh, yes.
Give it that, yeah. We'll handle that on a district by district basis.
Okay.
Cause that one's kind of, cause what'll happen is, you have your, like Jesse said, by reordering it, it'll be the general development standards. And then what'll happen is each district will have more specific standards that'll take precedent, you know, that's just.
I think that the first thing I would just call out or ask for is a change of language or a definition of developed jointly as a common drive.
Right, yes.
I think that's what, that verbiage either needs some real definition or to be,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. Excellent.
Yeah, and this parking stuff is all, right, like there's, our streets aren't all the same
No,
width even, are they?
no.
Like not even close.
They're supposed to be to certain standards, when we assess them, we'll get that, I mean,
Yeah.
that information Mike has, like,
Yeah.
but it's, we have some strangely developed intersections, that much we
Yeah,
can say
yeah.
for sure. So,
Yeah.
As long as there's a sight triangle.
yes, that's very important in our code.
What is a site?
Exactly.
So that you can, when you go out and you know when you have trouble looking left, something's blocking your view down the street, you gotta pull out and almost get hit, there's a problem with the sight triangle essentially, right? So you should be able to see clearly as you're approaching an intersection or a turn point, right or left, you know, some yardage back so you can, you know, but if you're creeping up and you're like,
So like,
Sure,
I guess I'll
It's
go.
like some reasonable field of vision that makes a triangle instead of like, I can see nothing
So
and I can
so
see.
what happens when it's village property and you can't see?
well, we should be
There's like a
turning it
pier in
back
the
or making
way,
it-
or there's bushes.
yeah, the village should rectify the situation where it occurs. Some of that gets down to design of these strange intersections, which we've tried to, you know, which cost money to fix over the course of time. You know, they should be changed. Michael has recommended them many times, they be changed.
My next to us used to have a great example, but I believe the village made them trim it or pull it out, but there used to be a giant bush at the corner of Alder Vista and Maplewood.
Okay.
Right, and it was huge, it was like a 6 foot tall, 6 foot wide bush right at the corner. So there was no seeing around that corner.
That is such an engineer intensive section there. This next one I think is interesting, 127204, where we talk about home occupations.
That's gonna be a meeting all by itself.
Exactly. Absolutely, and that's the question is, how do you? I would be curious to see what more is needed of that once we go through our permitted and conditional uses in each
Yeah.
zoning district.
I agree, it's one of those to where, since we're all residential, we may be able to simply put it under each district.
Yes.
Take it out here
Yep.
versus, you know, having this kind of weird thing that then, you know, not only do we have home occupation, we then jump into, condition, you know, premises and all kinds of
Yeah, I mean,
Correct.
there's, my goodness, there's like 13 conditions attached to it.
motor vehicle repairs in there as well, which I know, because again, they threw that in there because it was a problem at one time, people fixing their vehicles, what they can do, bless you.
No mechanical equipment shall be used except normal domestic equipment, adding machines, typewriters.
Adding machines.
Adding machines.
Great.
For
What's an adding machine?
Like an abacus.
That's right.
I've got
Or
an
my-
old school adding machine and an abacus.
My niece
It's
says,
my
my niece
nephew's
said,
favorite toy at my.
why do they call that a cigarette lighter?
It's a thing in the car. Because once upon a time, terrible
Or
people
what's
like
a
me.
cassette?
Why do you hang up the phone?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, yeah, so that's interesting. So I won't even go deeply into like messing with all of these criteria for the very reason that we might be able to eliminate it.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
We'll have one very brief, we can condense this to, if your proposed home occupation doesn't meet any of the conditional uses, which I think we can probably.
That's right, cause yeah, you can make them, you can make a lot of them, you can make certain ones like landscaping company a conditional use. You can make them all conditional use within a residential district, quite
Right.
frankly, which would be reasonable,
Oh, yeah.
you know?
And then you just handle it that way.
Yeah.
Instead of this,
I would say, the ones that are office, because everyone's working out of their homes to some degree, you don't have any people coming to your house, you're working on your computer, you're clearly allowed to work out of your home. It's when you get into equipment, machinery.
traffic showing up.
Traffic,
Yep.
customers, that's when you're starting to.
Lots
say-
of cars,
I mean, average work from home would be a permitted use.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Straight
Right.
Without even getting into.
Correct.
Yeah.
And yeah, what you'll note is, once you start looking through A through J here, almost all of those fit into one of the 5 standards that you review for a conditional use.
Right.
Traffic, general welfare, so we can just strike a bunch of this, which would be great.
Yeah.
Cool.
I know you enjoy code.
Well, I was gonna ask if it was on the website, but no, this is even better. Early Christmas era.
Do what I can.
We'll send you a bill, 10 cents a page.
10
mind.
cents a page,
Okay.
that's what it is.
Permits for home occupations, I mean, obviously I think it's up to all of you, but if it's,
If it's a conditional use and they have to file for it, then they have to go through the process
Conditional
anyways, that becomes a permit. Essentially.
yep, excellent.
But the fees, so, sorry, I think we're in the same place, but what is this, 127204, B1,
Yeah,
oh no, 2, sorry.
Permits,
Permits, yeah, that should be the language that refers back to our fee schedule.
yes.
Oh, and you already had that, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, no problem. Oh, yeah.
I didn't
Oh, yeah,
catch
we're
your
right.
reading the comment yet.
Cool.
Oh, here's a general comment. So typically, at least on my word processor, a capital A comes before the small a. And in this code, we have small letter A, and then a 1, and then we go to the capital A as a subsection under small b.
We'll have
which
to
is-
format it properly, whatever the current standards are.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I only didn't change it because the entire document would be read.
Yeah.
Yes, gotcha,
Yeah, we could mirror the revised
It's
code.
like, okay, but we're gonna revise that, right, so that it's just like.
Well,
when you're-
I'll tell you though,
Or
if
is
we
that-
do, we'd have to revise.
Oh, the entire
entire
thing,
village
because
code.
it's all like
Yeah.
that, oh, jeez.
But I mean, so, and that speaks to a larger issue, I mean, is the plan to pass a single ordinance
With all these changes.
all the changes?
Yes.
Yes.
And so there would be no, it would make for an incredibly long document, but not, it wouldn't make it more controversial
No,
to,
no,
you know,
just
it
renumber.
would mean, yeah, it would mean pretty
Yeah.
much every page of code is in it, but not because you're changing anything that
substance.
matters.
Yeah, true.
And if the point is to rewrite this for clarity, I would think that's a worthwhile endeavor to make it
Yeah,
read easy.
I don't hate that.
Right, let's do this once and do it right.
I mean, I don't even think this format is an option in my
I
Microsoft
wonder-
Word program.
Is it possible that the codifiers did that in the codification?
Not necessarily, I mean, yes and no, it's hard to tell at this point, because remember, they brought a lot of the 89 code forward as it was.
Yeah.
When we hired the codifier.
Right.
So,
Well, when you go through if you click back enough, it lets you view everybody that they have. I'll just for fun look when I get home tonight and see pull up somebody else's code that this company also handles and see
And
if
see if
there's
they do that way.
a number dumb too.
It would be interesting because, I mean, it's just a weird thing. But it's weird enough that it hit my somebody else's problem field. Like I was just like, oh, that is not a thing I need to deal with.
Yeah.
And just moved along.
Jesse has interns.
That's right, yeah, we have a summer associate starting in a few weeks, they're on the lookout for projects.
There's a
Go
good one
abuse.
for an intern,
That's
yeah.
right.
Format this properly according to this manual.
That's right.
Yeah.
That is
Make
a
it-
perfect intro.
Make it mirror the code.
Saves us money doing it that way.
It's due in a week. And don't bill it.
That's generous.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is due last night. You do not go home. You do not use the bathroom.
There's a shower on the 5th floor. Let's see, waste accumulation. Maybe I jumped too far. Well, yeah, the permits there, we'll refer back to the fee schedule. We'll basically strike that permitted home occupations section and work that into permitted and conditional uses. This waste accumulation, what did I note?
That, I think, wasn't this the one where, again, this section became the catch-all for all the shenanigans over the years that they threw in here. This is
that gas
garbage.
station stuff?
No, this is under C, which is 72.04C. And I believe this is the concealed trash cans thing, which
Yeah.
we're having
Yes.
so many issues with right now too. So again, this is something that we work back into the residential
Yeah.
zoning code
Yes.
section itself for the districts,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So either it presets the districts prior to getting into them as a whole, so.
Well, is there a reason why this would be different across the districts and shouldn't?
No,
be
it
in
should,
the general?
it should lead before, yeah, it should,
It should
the
be in the
general
general.
should be, again, as we were reorganizing, it
Yeah.
should come up outside of this zone and wherever this is a weird limbo place.
Yeah.
For all the code. But yeah, it should definitely be before we get into each of the specific districts.
Mm-hmm.
Is that currently enforced? I mean,
We're having challenges with that. It's supposed to be enforced, people want it enforced, and then you run into all kinds of issues, so.
okay.
It's not going well.
Yeah, it's
I
challenging.
mean, if I'm gonna rat on myself, I have some building materials on my driveway right
Oh,
now.
I've got
so-
stuff in my backyard from my neighbors,
Yeah,
so.
it's not those type of issues, it's the trash cans and when the trash cans are pulled in and when they're put out. And some people are leaving them outside and they stink, and then the problem in the new section is people put them around the side when they don't have a
Right.
bump out. They put it around the side, but of course someone's porch is right there. So they're wafting in that lovely garbage and they look at it all day and it's making people very unhappy, on both sides of it.
Yeah, we're getting lots of complaints.
Yes. So, yeah, it's keeping the zoning officer busy.
So is it a complaint about that they aren't enclosed? Is that what they're
That's
saying?
part
My
of it.
neighbor doesn't have it enclosed and so
It's that and the fact of the way that the new subdivision specifically is designed is that, let's say they pull it around the side, right, and let's say they've got it blocked. But even if they pull it around the side, someone's porch is
Right
within
there,
15
right.
feet, right, and they A, have to look at it, B, they get smell in the summertime. So see, that's the problem. What they really want is they want them kept in the garage, but then the challenge is in the garages that don't have the bump, because you'll see the ones with the little bump out, they can't get the garbage can in there properly with two vehicles, it's tight, right? I mean, they may have to put it, sometimes people have to be a little creative. I had it in my house once, you can do it. But
Yeah, I mean,
some of the bigger vehicles make it challenging.
I could barely fit between my car and the
Yeah.
damn garbage cans. They're in there.
So it's a bit of there's a functional issue to this as well as the practical issue of changing the code.
Yeah. Garages are too small.
So
But
people
that's
could,
why it's enforced over.
And trash cans are too big.
so
Yes.
people could still have it,
Don't get the one from waste.
people could still have it screened,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
We
then
don't-
there's still complaints
It's a
because
different type of complaint.
Same way.
Different
Yeah, we want a
complaint,
big
yeah.
recycling
It's a
can
nuisance
and a
complaint.
small
In a
trash
But
can.
then we're like, but it's stored right, now we're in the catch
Put that out,
22.
have a regular.
So then does it have to be approved
Just
by?
from the car, it's like, okay, if we hit that, that's okay.
They're allowed to do what it says here without any problem, I mean, I don't know that
A fundamental.
I guess that's a good question, I don't think we require the,
Because it sounds like one, it could be like, unsightly, trash blowing all over, but then also the odor, so
the
like you
odor is
could,
an issue too.
you could have like a,
Nuisance.
yeah.
Yeah,
So I don't
so
know.
you can use a fence, now I suspect, we'll just have to talk about that, we wanna know what they're putting up, so we'll have
That's
to
on
require.
you.
What?
That's for you to deal with, Councilman.
Nuisance.
Cause yeah, I
This,
I have a buddy who lives in a nice area now in Indiana, and he was smoking meat and had effectively code enforcement called for an offensive odor.
I'd pay somebody.
And it's like,
Smoke
what's,
next
you know, who decides what kind of odor is offensive,
some
right?
vegans next door.
It's like, if I don't like
Right.
your perfume,
yeah.
Yeah, but see, that's
So it's
technically
tough.
cooking, I mean, it's gonna be probably like grills, when cultivating code and forth, it's not gonna be an enforceable action in that regard, because I'm using a legitimate outdoor,
right,
you know, cooking device.
Right. But if there's a nuisance variance that says the creation of and propagation of offensive odors
Right.
is prohibited, then you create a situation where that permitted use of cooking in your backyard could also create a prohibitive odor. So you can
And-
barbecue
right, and
all
either
you
way-
want. You can smoke all you want, just don't make a stinky smell.
right, and either way, you
And
cause somebody
you
to
just
have
need
to
it.
come out.
Yeah.
You'll just need a noxious odor definition, which is
Yeah.
like garbage.
Yeah,
by the
I
blood.
agree.
Yeah,
Does not include
takes,
cooking.
it takes a lot
The
to.
cheese smell's gone, but it's
Unless you're
cooking on it.
specifically burning rotten meat or
And my-
something.
Yeah.
my buddy is in a
Yeah, yeah,
so like,
right?
Or just, the suit that's at the bottom of
it was still like.
what is my, when I used to compost, I'd have problems getting
Yes.
the nitrogen and the carbon mix right, so it was always a little stinky and drove my wife nuts, but, like,
My brother found a wonderful composting, actually maybe you got
Company.
on.
Yeah, you put it, yeah.
Yeah,
Him and I are both part of it.
Yeah, it's not.
Oh,
they
the
pick
bucket.
up- Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's great.
we didn't sign up, cause
You don't
I'm
get
a
to
bad
use any of
person.
that, that's the thing though, like,
I was gonna
you give it to them and then they collect
Right,
it.
Well, no,
that's
they-
what I,
they
that's
can't
why I
even
didn't
use
sign
it.
up, cause I was
Well,
like,
but
I
don't I
think
get
you're
it,
supposed to
don't I
get,
get it back?
you're
That's
supposed to
what I-
get like
I guess
one,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like twice a year you get
A
a,
Yeah,
what,
you
a
get a
little
couple buckets
container?
back.
yeah,
Yeah,
you get like a
yeah.
bucket's worth once a year or something
what
like
Only
that.
once a year?
Maybe twice,
I think
I
you
think
can
you
have
get
more than
the
that.
whole
Yeah.
thing for pickup and stuff, right?
Yeah, I looked at it and I said,
container.
if I wanna compost, I'll compost, but I
Yeah.
don't.
I thought they were doing a regular pickup, like they come through.
They're doing like a
My-
trial,
was my
trial
big
rollout right now. so
Bucket
they're
that I
gonna
was
do for
doing
like
it
a
in,
month, and then they
like,
decide they
the
wanna do
flies
it
would get in
permanently.
there
Okay.
and lay their eggs, and then all through the summer, the
Yep.
whole thing would just thrum with flies.
Yeah.
You'd walk by and it'd go, it kinda,
Yeah, we had one at my old place, we decided not to bring it, cause it was, like, you'd cook one big something, right, it just wasn't big enough, and so like, you'd have people over and 2 watermelons, and now like, everything's thrown off, because you've just put too much green in,
And for
and then
me-
you're like, calling people for newspaper to,
right, and see,
Try
for
and
me, it
put
was
more
the
brown in.
other way, I always had too much brown, cause it would be my spent grains from brewing.
right,
Right, and so I'd have all this brown in there, and
Like begging for
there's
banana peels.
there's not enough grass clippings in the universe to offset 40 pounds of spent brewing grains.
Nice.
we just need to haul garbage back and forth between each other's houses.
Right,
I would make a giant compost dump.
a
basically.
neighborhood compost.
Well, they used to have that when I lived in Rochester, New York. They used to have a big, like if you, the yard waste would go to a big community
Yeah.
place. They'd grind it all up, had a huge pile of compost, and then you could just come then and load up your pickup truck
it's
or
kind of
bin.
Planning and zoning has had this discussion before.
Pick
Oh,
up
have
green.
And
Oh,
the
it would be
general.
difficult to
I mean,
manage,
remember
I would
the-
imagine.
Yeah, the general consensus was that we cannot all be trusted to do this properly. Right. And that you end up with effectively a,
The trash
A
dump.
dump.
a tire fire.
Where in Rochester did you live? Where in Rochester did you live?
Leave soon, cause someone might
Oh,
bite
this,
people in it.
the
Yeah, that's
neighborhood?
fine, let's do.
Oh, Winton.
I was in.
Jesse, can we find a decent
in
stopping
Henrietta.
space, or we
Oh,
have-
yeah.
Yeah. We actually already. I mean, this was very
Went
helpful.
to McQuaid Jesuit for a couple
I mean,
of years.
I don't know if it felt helpful to everybody else, but now looking through it for
Good old
the
Rochester.
millionth time.
I do miss a good garbage plate.
I think we're probably in a good spot.
I
Yeah,
never
I agree,
did
because
get-
it's made in some more
I could
detailed
never
stuff.
get,
Yeah.
although I did like,
I-
there was a
yeah,
place
the
called
great takeaway,
Dogtown that had like
I think
hot
we can get
dogs
rid of almost
and
that entire
turkey.
home
That was
occupation section, which I think
And
is
I
great.
miss
That I
Country
hadn't
Sweet
thought of
Wings.
before.
We didn't get to
Place
Hello
on-
Horse, but that's okay.
That's all right. Yeah,
It
we'll
was
catch
so
Hello
good
Horse
in
next time.
Rochester, and I haven't found a good place for barbecue around.
Which
Columbus
again,
and,
at
like,
some
was
point,
just a
somebody thought this is gonna be
different
really important,
I-
but
I
now
agree.
with
Dinosaur
drones, it probably
barbecue
is,
here was,
so.
what was the other one? There was one, I mean, yeah, and there was like, yeah.
It's a different animal.
Well, thanks, everybody.
Yes, thank you very much.
This is, you know, this is not the most fun thing, but it will matter.
That was a lot.
I thought we were going for another half hour now.
I think we're probably all
Very good.
looking for a reason to not do this now.
Okay.
So my thought just going forward is we're gonna meet again at the beginning of June. That first meeting in June, we're gonna hopefully have section 14 ready for us by then too.
Yep, absolutely.
At this point, hopefully we know kind of how to read this, so I'll send stuff out as soon as it's available. And we can kind of take a look and make notes and hopefully go just a touch faster. I feel like 14 went quicker than 12, or am I backwards?
There should be a few things cut out of 14. Do you want to, because we'd already talked a little bit about 14.
We could do another like small work session
We're
on
due,
it.
yeah, we
could
could
zoom
have
in.
another meeting, and
Yeah.
then we have that prepared, and then at some point, July, August, we'll have to get into the depth of a couple, that'll be enough time to get, new map and stuff together for review of districts and everything.
So, yeah, so the plan is that first week in June, we will meet, it will be an official meeting because we will hopefully have a variance.
Yep.
If we don't have a variance ready, you know, within 24 hours per our rules, then we'll just do a work session again.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, if we do the variance, will we still do some of this
Yes,
after?
yes, we'll do the variance first and then we'll dive back into this.
Yep.
Can we adjourn out of the meeting into a work session so that we don't have
Just
to?
discussion of business.
I'm happy,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm happy to allow the public to speak for 5 minutes on the code
Be careful what you
rewrite
say.
as a whole. I mean, we will eventually officially make these recommendations, and
We
so
have
the
to have a
public will
public
have a chance
That's
to
right,
speak.
yes. Find a way too, so you don't have to print them all, I'll circulate.
I will be here Friday, but do you have anything on?
Thanks guys for doing all the legwork.
Thanks for being here, thanks
Yeah,
for making